What's up? What's happening? It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we hit you off the top with legitimate big breaking news. It is not often in the year 2024 that you are driving down the road and I get to tell you something that you do not know, but I haven't seen a lot of alerts go out on this. It was just announced officially by the Commanders, but the Commanders have released former first-round pick Jamin Davis, who, of course, was drafted as a linebacker under Ron Rivera in the previous regime, switched to defensive end. I thought at times during the spring and the summer was unlikely to make the roster, did a tremendous job of continuing to fight, continuing to compete, continuing to try to learn and better himself at a new position at defensive end. And he stayed on the roster for a good long while. But part of that was always there were a couple of players that I thought were ahead of him on the depth chart in various positions that allowed the numbers to work that ultimately meant Jamin was here for now. And if he continued to improve, might be the guy that gets to stick around. But with Jordan McGee set to come back off of IR is my guess on one of the guys who will ultimately be activated here with F.A. Obata already coming back and leaping him on the depth chart, and with the need for some more interior defensive linemen, thanks to the John Allen injury, Jamin Davis has become the odd man out. Again, this was announced just moments ago by the Commanders. They are releasing Davis, who could come back on the practice squad, and I would assume they would want him to. Why would you not have him come back if he's someone that you think could potentially help you if you get another injury? He already knows the system. You have a great relationship with him. It's just, this is what happens. It's a numbers game, and Davis is in the final year of his contract, so financially it's pretty easy to do. Davis, of course, was the 19th overall pick in the 2021 draft, 50 games with the team, 36 starts, and he did play minutes, obviously, last weekend. Commanders also added two players, safety Ben Nickel and wide receiver Michael Strachan. Sorry, Michael, I do not know how to pronounce your last name. Nickel was with the Commanders during training camp, by the way. Strachan was a 7th-round pick by the Colts in 2021, so those guys are on the practice squad. Sheldrick Redwine was released from the practice squad. Also, just a few minutes ago, Kayvon Seymour, who had been signed to the Commanders practice squad, was suspended 6 games for violating, I believe, the substance policy. But a lot of news happening. The most important thing here is Davis. And, you know, something that I've been thinking about a lot this week post the Carolina game and in watching some other games this weekend, and it's something that actually I brought to Take Command to talk about with Logan today, is the amount of bad football being played around the NFL. And this will circle back to the Jamin thing in a moment, and a kind of miraculous fact about the Commanders, which is that they're not playing bad football. But when you get multiple high picks wrong or multiple big investments wrong, it can absolutely tank your football team. And the two best examples of this in the league right now are Cleveland and Carolina, two teams that the Commanders have absolutely walloped this year, who in different ways invested tremendously large amounts in the quarterback position. And it is far more amplified at quarterback than any other position, but it is worth playing this thought out here when we get the news that Jamin has been released and what it means for Washington and the rebuild and the job that Adam Peters has frankly already done. But with Cleveland and Carolina, they spent, in Cleveland's case, multiple draft picks and unprecedented money to acquire Deshaun Watson. And Watson was abysmal. Now, of course, hurt, but it was an abject failure at the position from purely a football lens that, based off how he was acquired, was needed to not only not be a failure, but they needed him to elevate the rest of the roster because they spent an undue amount on him. So it's saying, hey, we're not going to have all the other pieces. We're not going to have all the young players, the draft picks. We're not going to have financial ability from a salary cap standpoint to spend on other players. We need you to be incredible. And obviously he wasn't. And thus, their offense is one of the 5 worst units in the league on either side of the ball. They stink the high heavens. Then Carolina took what was essentially 5 starters. 5 starters. DJ Moore, 4 draft picks that have turned into starting players for the Chicago Bears. I think there's only 4 and then a 2025 pick that's still to come. That's a third rounder. That presumably will become a starter for them. And they put that on Bryce Young and said, Bryce, we're going to need you day one to be, elevate this roster because we just traded away your best receiver. We traded away other ways to acquire good players. And obviously that was an unmitigated disaster. One of the worst first overall picks ever to this point. And you feel terrible for Bryce because although clearly Andy Dalton comes in and the Carolina offense is better with him, like it's not all Bryce's fault. And you wonder if he had gotten a start under a different situation, if he could be good. And you wonder, frankly, down the road, you see the way that Baker Mayfield has reinvented himself, and not that Baker was as bad as Bryce was, but Baker, Geno, Sam Darnold, these guys that were high picks, first, second rounders in Geno's case, that needed some seasoning, needed some time, and then they get to a good place with some good coaching, and all of a sudden they look like really good NFL quarterbacks. Not the best, but solid. Could that be Bryce Young's trajectory? Maybe. But very clearly, the way to be a terrible football team is to invest a lot, miss a lot, and then you stink. And where this comes back to the Jamin Davis news is part of the reason Washington is so overperforming expectations is they don't have studs almost anywhere outside of the guy they drafted second overall. And that's because the last regime went 0 for 4 on first-round picks. And that is impossible to do. It is just incredible that you miss when you have the second overall pick. You take Jamin with Chase. Part of that is injury. Part of that is a miss probably on the character to some extent. And I'm talking football character, the way that he worked versus the way that they thought he would. And it also probably speaks to the environment that was here, that a different Chase Young goes to a different place, a place that was much more similar to Ohio State's culture. I think you get, from a football competitive standpoint, I think you get a better version of Chase Young, and now he is what he is in New Orleans, and it's not going great down there either. San Francisco wasn't that interested in bringing him back. We see what happens there. Jamin, just overdrafted. Straight up overdrafted, poorly coached. If you want to take a project, you have to be good at coaching them to get the most out of the athletic traits that made them worth investing in the first place. I don't put that on Jamin. I put that on the staff. Obviously, we see what's happening with Forbes and on down the list of failed draft picks. But if you go 0 for freaking 4, John Dotson traded to Philadelphia being the 4th. Do you realize what kind of talent hole that puts you in? Do you realize how that almost instantaneously puts you, and by the way, they don't have a quarterback that entire time, how instantaneously that puts you in the Carolina, Cleveland, Tennessee, Las Vegas, these teams that are historically bad. And yet somehow, in 1 year, by knowing what does work, Adam Peters has built a roster that Dan Quinn has coached up, along with a tremendous amount of help. Cliff, Joe Witt, down the line of their staffs. To be 5-2 and one of the better teams in the league. Not only one of the better teams, one of the more reliable teams. Because they prioritize the right things. Yes, having the guy at quarterback that elevates the entire rest of your roster is completely different. And matching him with the schemer, by the way, in Cliff, who seems to be able to elevate him and anybody else, see what Marcus just did against Carolina, that's pretty important. But to dig yourself out of a hole where you have next to no blue chip talent, and all due respect to Terry, who I love as a player and as a dude, John, who I think is excellent, Duran, excellent player. None of those dudes are top 5 at their position. The kind of, hey, we didn't just do a good job with our first rounders. In John and Duran's case, obviously Terry's a home run as a third rounder, but first round type of guys, we didn't just do a good job. We got a legitimate, bona fide, good starter. We hit home runs. We drafted Aaron Donald. We drafted the best of the best, Sauce Gardner. Not that one great corner obviously makes a team, but they don't have those guys that are top 5 at their position because they messed up all the picks that you use to get those guys. And they messed up all of the free agent signings you do to get those guys. And still, Adam Peters was like, we can get to 5-2. Now, I think it's worth exploring perhaps what some of those things are. What are some of the ways that the Commanders zigged when other teams have been zagging to exploit the weaknesses in the current marketplace, and also what understanding of team building does it show that they have. And we did that today on Take Command, and I'm going to play that segment for you at 5:30 because I think it's actually even more interesting in the background here now that we have this news that we didn't have this morning, which is that Jamin Davis has been released. We'll see 24 hours from now if he comes back on the practice squad or if he's claimed by someone else. So that's how we'll start the show tomorrow. Or if, Washington might not bring him back on the practice squad. We shall see. But those decisions to be made forthcoming. As for now, let's get your reaction at 301-230-0980. Not the question we had posed for Vibe Check Tuesday, but I'm curious how everyone is feeling about this breaking news. 301-230-0980. Jamin Davis has been released by the Commanders. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Quick programming note. We were going to, I'm going to put this out on social media, et cetera, et cetera. We were going to air our interview with Ted Leonsis at 4:30. We're going to push that back until 4:45 today. So here's kind of how the show is going to run down. We will take your calls now on the Jamin Davis news, 301-230-0980. If you are just tuning in, Davis has been released by the Commanders as they make a series of roster moves this afternoon. So we will continue our coverage of that, take your calls, et cetera, et cetera. Quick pivot to Leonsis. Very, very cool thing that I got to do yesterday and chat with him at this art gallery that he's opening that is open to the public as of tonight. But we talked about the Wizards and we talked about like the important stuff that you'd expect. So that is coming up at 4:45. And then 5 o'clock, we'll get right back on the story with Mitch Tischler on a Tischler Tuesday. But let's get to it. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Darius. Darius, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? What's up, Greg? My bad. So I just wanted to react to the Jamin Davis news. You know, I agree with you. I think he was, definitely overdrafted. And I can remember back when they drafted him, how they were saying, they kind of felt like he could be a project, type of guy with his speed and try to put him in like the Micah Parsons role. But they didn't have a coach on the roster, on the staff that could do it between Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio. So I kind of feel bad, but at the same time, it's the league, so you got to produce. But I think he'll end up landing somewhere else. I can't say the same for our cornerback, even though I kind of, hope we could find use for both of them. But it was a never one.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the call. I think that, when you look at Jamin, I think the most important thing I would say is, this isn't Jamin's fault, in my opinion. He was set up to fail, and he fought as long as he could to try not fail. And I give Jamin a ton of credit, presuming everything that I heard out of Ashburn is true, which is that he really, stuck his nose to the grindstone and was like, I'm here to compete. I'm here to, fine, change my position. I'll fight. I'm not gonna fight you. I'm gonna fight for my spot. And that takes a lot. That tells me a lot about his competitive character. It's high. He's getting cut because he's not a good defensive end in the NFL, which kind of no kidding he's not. Defensive end is hard, man. And that is another thing about what I was talking about with the Commanders specifically not being terrible as a football team, with considering how many first-round picks they've missed on. Think of the positions they've missed on. They are 4 of them, or 3 of the 4, and then ultimately 4 of the 4 most expensive positions in the sport outside of quarterback. So quarterback's 1. What's the most the next highest paid guys? Edge rushers? Okay, they missed on one of those. Wide receivers missed on one of those. Corner missed on one of those. We're just missing a left tackle. That's all they're missing, and a quarterback. I mean, holy crap, man. If you don't have those with your draft picks or with highly paid players, your team's going to suck. And somehow this team doesn't suck. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Aveen in D.C. Aveen, thanks for calling. What's your reaction to the Jamin Davis news?
Hey, Craig. With the current Quinn-Peters partnership we have right now, the direction the organization's moving in, what it feels like, those Rivera draft picks just feel so much in the past to me. And, just with all the players we signed this offseason, the players we drafted, there weren't any splash signings or anything, but those guys have a plan for each of those players. And those players all have a role. And it seems like all the players we signed so far, are contributing to the team. It just shows what a difference it makes. When you have the coach, GM on the same page, they know what they're doing. They have a plan. And you can get these guys to contribute.
No, yeah.
It just makes it,
100%. I think it's such a good point. Thanks for the call. When you have a unified vision, which is, I think, one of their big things. Sometimes I can't remember which one's which between the Commanders and the Wizards. Who's got the unified vision, who's got the organizational alignment. I think alignment's the Commanders one. I think unified vision is the the Wizards?
Yeah, I think.
I don't think it matters that much. I think
Yeah, I'm thinking hard as a mug.
Well, don't hurt yourself over there. Maybe do a Google, but certainly don't.
I got you.
I think I actually did just see a small firework go off inside of Anthony's head. That was a brain cell of his exploding. The point is, when you have everybody on the same page, and you know, not just on the same page from like a vision standpoint, but I think like Adam Peters' superpower is he goes to coaches and he goes, "What do you want? I want a corner who can do X, Y, and Z." Okay, cool. Here's that guy. By the way, he can't do F. Okay, we won't ask him to do F. And that's the synergy that we're talking about between what Adam Peters can do, find very specific skill sets, and nail it, and what Dan Quinn does. Because, by the way, Dan Quinn's this way as a coach. He's like, I will ask you to do this. Joe Witt has talked about this. BSJ and I talked about this in the spring on the corners. Like, we are asked to do specific things, and they tell us we don't have to worry about other stuff. And that clarity of assignment goes a long, long way, because there's certain things that certain guys can't do, and that's okay. If you can do everything, you're a star. But I can make you a star in your role by asking you to do the right role as a coach and as a personnel person who gives an accurate scouting report of a skill set to a coach. And I think we're seeing that. And, you know, I get why they decided to do what they did with Jamin in terms of, hey, he's really explosive. He's really strong. He works really hard. Can we convert him into a Micah Parsons type? I thought they actually used him really well this year. I thought they gave him opportunities to rush, but they also occasionally would zone blitz with him and drop him out and be like, okay, for a linebacker, he's not great in coverage, but for a defensive end, he's phenomenal because he's actually done this before. And so they would choose some of their spots, but if ultimately they can get some of that stuff from other guys, maybe it's playing more Jordan McGee and putting Frankie Louvu on the edge more. I thought it was interesting last week that Joe Witt Jr. was like, yeah, you know, Micah Parsons and Frankie Louvu, I don't want to compare the players, but we kind of have that role for him. And I'm like, well, eventually what you did with Micah Parsons was move him full-time to edge. And Frankie Louvu is definitely a full-time better pass rusher than he is someone in coverage. So maybe they want to get Jordan McGee on the field more now that the rookie, I presume, is back. That or he's going to IR for the rest of the year. I think like this was the week / the day that they had to do that. So I'll do a little quick follow-up on that. But whatever the reason is, whatever the corresponding roster moves are, they're definitely going to try to figure out the best combinations that they have in their front seven. And with the options available to them, Jamin Davis was the odd man out. He could come back on practice squad. We'll see. But as for now, Jamin is on waivers. So next 24 hours is going to be interesting for him. If he gets claimed somewhere else, then someone will pick him up. I kind of doubt that would happen. If anything, like, don't claim him. Just try to get him on. If you think you need Jamin Davis that bad, okay, you can pay him whatever his rookie salary is. But if you let him clear waivers, then the Commanders would have to pay him that money, and then he gets to go sign a new contract somewhere else, and someone will sign him to a league minimum. So we'll ultimately see where that goes, but that is the current status of things as we sit here at just after or just before 4:30 on a Monday. On a Tuesday. Again, coming up at 4:45, Ted Leonsis, one-on-one. Talked to him yesterday. You want to hear what he has to say about the new arena in D.C., as well as a couple of key things with the Wizards. That's coming up at 4:45. Mitch Tischler, 5 o'clock. More of your calls next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we're streaming live a little more clearly on YouTube. Just had to clean the camera, Anthony. Sometimes it'd be like that. You look up and you're like, that's dusty. Ain't nothing about this show is ever going to be dusty on my watch.
Do I look dusty?
No.
Okay. Just
We got the light. The light this time of year comes in terribly on our backlighting. We gotta get some backdrops. Anyway, nobody cares on the radio. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. That is where you call and give us all of your takes on Jamin Davis being released, the former Commander's first-round pick in the final year of his contract, gets cut, presumably for linebacker Jordan McGee to make his return off of IR. He's got to get activated this week. He's missed the maximum amount of time that you can miss before you either revert to IR and are done for the season without the ability to come back, or you are back and good. So he can't stay on IR and be practicing this week. It's now or never. So unless something went wrong in his rehab, it's presumably for Jordan McGee, and they need that roster spot. And guys like Michael Walker, who perhaps were on the cutting edge earlier in the season, have played well, and so they want that spot there. And especially as they're obviously going to keep Dominique Hampton around, but it's basically a redshirt year for him as he moves to linebacker from safety. So Jamin's the guy with F.A. Obata back that ultimately gets that call. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Mark. Mark, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Thank you for taking my call. Got two quick comments. Number one, I'm surprised it took this long to cut Jamin because he was not a very good football player. He was a good athlete. When they drafted him, they were super enamored with his speed and his strength. But at linebacker, he was not very good, and at defensive end, he was not very good. And he stuck around only because he was a first-round pick. If he was a late-round pick or an undrafted free agent, he would have been gone a long time ago.
Under the Rivera administration, they probably would have moved on. Maybe. I don't know. This administration I don't think they cared about his draft status, to be honest. They saw an athlete.
The other administration, the other administration wouldn't have released him because they drafted him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If he had been a seventh-round pick, with his level of production, would he have stayed around? Probably not. I think you're probably right about that. I think when this administration took over, they didn't care that he was a first-round pick. They thought he was worth the experiment, and he played well enough to be the last guy until there were more guys like F.A. Obata coming off on IR ahead of him, and now here we are.
Yeah, and my second comment is I don't think they completely whiffed on all first-round draft picks because you're forgetting Chase Young was the defensive rookie of the year. And,
Mark, all due respect, I'm not forgetting that. You don't go. I'm not forgetting that. A second overall pick is an abject failure if all they do is win Rookie of the Year and then do not produce a lick for the remaining 3 years.
You're forgetting he tore his knee up.
I am not forgetting any of that.
And he's a guy that was a little bit undersized and relied on speed, and he wasn't the same player after tearing up his knee and missing close to 2 years.
Yeah,
so,
but in no way does that mean that they were actually successful. We don't know that alternate universe. And there was a lot of stuff Chase Young's rookie year that while he was freaky enough as an athlete to make some plays and obviously produce enough to get Rookie of the Year, there were a lot of concerns about his game's growth moving forward that he never corrected.
Yeah, he was selfish. He was selfish and he just chased sacks.
So why, they don't get a passing grade for Chase Young. Sorry, that's not it. Thanks for the call, Mark. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980 is where you call in, or if you want to leave a comment in the YouTube chat. Let's see. Who's Smith about to come to Washington? Who's Anthony? Who do we think a pass rusher? Smith. Zadarius. Oh yeah. Here's the thing. I don't know that Adam Peters is going to be as active in the trade market as people think. I also don't know that means that Adam Peters ain't going to make a trade. I think that the people know a very small amount of names because they know guys that have had big sack production, that are the stars, that whatever. And some of those guys do make sense. Zadarius Smith plays hard, whatever. But I'll give you an example. and I've even said this name the past couple of days, and I thought a little bit more about it. I watched him a little bit more, obviously, this weekend. But, like, Deontay Johnson's super talented. There is no way in hell they are trading for Deontay Johnson. I would be stunned. Why? Watch tape. Doesn't run with the intensity. And look, maybe they know. The one caveat I would say is, like, if they know him, if Adam interviewed him in the draft process and was like, I know what's in that kid, and he's not going to thrive in the kind of situation that is happening in Carolina because that's a dumpster fire, we can save him. Okay. But I kind of think Adam Peters' kind of guy is the kind of guy that doesn't need saving, that is super self-motivated, just plays with their hair on fire no matter what, lives and breathes football. And, like, get me a guy like Noah Brown, who the Texans are like, we got some other guys. And Adam Peters is like, that dude will play his face off every single snap. I don't know how much All-22 you watch outside of the clips that I pull for you, Anthony. But you want to see a wide receiver block? Oh, my God, Noah Brown. He moves people. There is an intense level of effort. And that's the perfect fit for here. Like, yeah, he's also big and strong and fast and runs pretty good routes. He's got good hands. But, like, he makes the offense work on certain stuff and turns, like, solid gains into big gains because he'll move a corner that's supposed to have edge contain completely out of the picture so that you don't even realize that he's the guy who had the edge contained because he's no longer on the edge. It is not contained. And I think that there is a much better chance that they find someone like that than a big name that people have heard of. Now, at the edge position, like, guys with pass rush juice don't come around that often. And so it seems like Hassan Reddick is going to stay in New York. I don't know who else is available. Maybe is it Arius Smith, someone. But at the end of the day, like, I don't think this means anything other than they need a roster spot for Jordan McGee. Like, this was their fifth defensive end. This isn't a sign that they're actually about to trade for one. Now, they might, but they're making this move probably because Jordan McGee is ready to come back on the roster, and they have to open up the roster spot before they take the practice field tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I mean, I think as the trade deadline draws near, there's going to be a lot of fans that, are expecting us to make moves. And I think, a lot of people see defensive tackle is, still a weakness on our defense. Like, even when you look at the numbers, we're 16th in the league as a defense. And I'm not sure, what's been reflected in our first 7 games is actually indicative of what we have on the defensive side of the ball. So I think, people just, they still want improvement, and it's going to start up front. And I'm not going to lie, Craig, I was looking, around the Twitter waves. Zadarius does have 4 sacks in the season. The Commanders.
Yeah, I mean, Zadarius Smith. Yeah. If they want to trade for Zadarius Smith and they can do it for a 6th or 7th round pick, like, shoot.
Yeah.
I would do that.
On a dime. Yeah.
But I think, Zadarius, if I remember, I haven't watched Zadarius Smith in a while, in terms of, like, actually studied him, but, like, pretty big dude who's pretty stout against the run, if I'm remembering correctly. It's always, yeah, he's a really good player. But I also think that, like, this staff has found ways to make stuff work, and they're continuing to tweak and will continue to find ways.
Yeah.
For instance, Jerzon Newton's a good young football player, but he missed a lot of camp. He's undersized. He's a rookie, and he hasn't really figured out how to play the run in the NFL yet. And Daron Payne is also kind of undersized. It's hard to call a 6 foot whatever 300 whatever pound man undersized, but, like, he's strong and he's powerful, but he doesn't play the way that Fedarian Mathis plays. And I think the staff quickly realized last week that Fedarian Mathis is probably the better pairing with Daron than Jerzon Newton. And the Panthers went from pushing the line of scrimmage up the middle 6 yards deep into the linebackers' laps to Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu being at the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, all of a sudden, okay, we're going to play those two. And then Jerzon's playing with Sheldon Day, and that's working too. Sheldon Day was on the street 2 weeks ago, so to speak. Sheldon Day's not an amazing, outstanding, stunningly fantastic football player. He's a big-ass man who knows what his job is. And, like, sometimes that's the NFL. Sometimes the NFL is finding the right mix of guys, not necessarily the guy. Yeah. Now, if you can get the right mix of guys next to the guy, then you get greatness. But right now, I think defensively, this team is looking for good, nevertheless great. Great's going to come with, draft picks on down the road. They're going to build through the draft. And that's what that means, is it involves some patience of actually getting to the draft. But in the short term, if they can find some guys that make what they do a little bit better, they'll probably make those moves as well. 301-230-0980 is the number. We'll get back to your calls coming up in a little bit. We'll get back to the Commanders at 5 o'clock with Mitch Tischler. And next, the owner of the Washington Wizards, Washington Capitals, Washington Mystics, chairman of Monumental Sports, Ted Leonsis.
Ted, we're here in the Benson Gallery. There's so many amazing pieces in here. How did you meet the photographer that took all these amazing photos, and how did we wind up here with all of them on display?
Sure. Harry Benson, I think, is the world's most important living photojournalist. and I met him about a decade ago in Florida, started collecting his art, and we're now the largest collector, if you will, benefactor. And I decided, as part of this theme of transformation of the arena, this was a hair salon. And I said, let's turn it into Smithsonian quality gallery. We'll put all of his work here. It's 175 photos, and open it up for free to the public. Let people understand the history of Washington, D.C., all the presidents, all the sports figures, and we brought Harry up here, who'll be here for a couple of days, greeting VIPs and the media. So exciting time.
For sure. And I think there's a beautiful symmetry, almost poetry, of owning a sports team, owning art. There are things that are shared and enjoyed by the public at large. How do you think about that stewardship of something like a collection like this? I mean, some of the pictures are just awe-inspiring. And also owning a team, there are multiple teams that are enjoyed by so many people.
Well, there's a bit of truth-telling that has to be told via photography, and we were downstairs and Harry was giving a tour, and he was there when Robert Kennedy was assassinated. And he was close friends with the family, but he had to take the shot. And so the authenticity to the craft and the art is really important. And he has shared that with everyone. I mean, he was like cover of Life magazines, Time magazines. You saw the cover shots that all these represent. And so, sports, entertainment, politics, it's really all comes together here in Washington, D.C. It's why we're the most important city in the world.
Speaking of D.C., you and the mayor had quite the weekend, it seems, or the weeks leading up into. At this point, there's been some news reports about the sale of the arena, the lease back. What can you tell us as we stand here on a Monday morning?
It's just another step in the long road to transforming this building. And, we announced, it seems like forever ago, that, we're staying in D.C. and the city was going to help. They're putting up about $500 million. We're putting up $300 million. This will be a major, I think the largest investment in an inner city existing building since Madison Square Garden. Twice the investment, let's say, of what just happened up in Philadelphia for the Flyers and the Sixers. And it shows a commitment not only to our fans, but really to downtown. And it'll start next summer. We're going to make a major investment on the first floor, the event level, just to have more space for our players. Our players deserve world-class training, world-class locker rooms, film rooms, and the like. And we'll start moving up all 4 floors, and then obviously outside will be the last thing that we finish. We've released some of the concept and ideas and plans. But there's this arms race that goes on with teams. You have to have great facilities. You've got to have great neighborhoods. You've got to have great school systems. What I'm most pleased with is that feels like we're in it together now with the city. We met with the president of the Metro last week. He came to a game. And he gets how important public transportation is. We've tons of meetings with the police chief. She understands traffic mitigation, sinking the lights, keeping the outside clean. We just need to uplift the services, and the city's made that commitment. And we'll manage everything in the building inside, but the city obviously is responsible for the outside. But I have a real good vibe that this next 25 years after the deal is consummated, and the deal was just presented to the city council. They had previewed it and voted on it previously, and now they'll do another 2 votes, if you will, have public hearings, and my expectation is that this will be approved and we'll move forward.
Ted Leonsis with us here on the Team 980. Of course, you're home for Wizards and Mystics basketball. And Ted, I want to bring up the Mystics for a second because the last game of the season, you set the all-time WNBA attendance record. Attendance at ESA was up, and the excitement in the WNBA, concluding in last night's finals, has never been higher. That's all great. The problem with construction in the summer at Capital One is that might be limiting if there are more opportunities to play there. So how is that getting managed as that brand and that league continues to grow and the calendar of the construction?
Yeah, it's going to be a real issue, and we've already started to look at where can we play that has 20,000 seats? It'll be a stub period, if you will, three years. Obviously, we can still play in our existing arena, but that has 4,000 or 5,000 seats. So for those games that we could sell 20,000 tickets, we'll have to find an alternate place. Obviously, we manage George Mason, there's University of Maryland. I'm sure we'll come to a solution. There'll be people who aren't happy with it, but I've disclosed this to the commissioner. We've disclosed it to the league. Everyone understands what we're up against. But when we won the Stanley Cup, one of our campaigns was it's worth the wait. That's how I think we have to look at this project. If we're going to spend $800 million, we've got to be able to use the offseason, just like Madison Square Garden when they did their big rehab. When do you do it? So someone asked me the other day, what if the Caps go or the Wizards go to the finals and they're playing all the way to June? Well, obviously we're not going to be constructing while we're in the playoffs. And so we'll figure it out, but it's going to be messy over the next couple of years, no doubt about it. No one's ever tried to do what we're doing. We've taken another 300,000 feet from this building. And, as you walk around this building, I think you'll see, as I said, this used to be a hair cutting salon. It did not look anything like this. And now it looks like a world-class art gallery. We can make it new. That's my intention, is to build a new building and make it look new for the players, for the fans, for the city, for the neighbors. But to get there, it's going to be a lot of work. There'll be a lot of Pardon Our Dust T-shirts being worn.
I feel like that could also be the theme of the rebuild that it's being embarked on by Michael and Will on the Wizards side of things. Pardon our dust. There's some things we have to do. And I think that one of the things that I hear from callers, et cetera, is the patience that is being asked to be had. People understand, like, you can't keep doing what you were doing, otherwise you get the same results. So a drastic change was necessary. But ultimately, as the chairman, you're the one who has to green light a long process when Wizards fans have been waiting a long time. So I'm just curious, from your perspective, the discussions you had to green light that, and ultimately your continued message to fans, say, hey, this is going to be, to say what you just said about all of this, worth it in the end.
You're being very charming now. I've listened to you on the radio. I've read your blogs. What would you have us do?
I would have you do exactly what you're doing.
I appreciate that. And so I did it once with the Capitals. It was worth the wait. And we actually did it originally when I bought the Wizards. We traded away all our players. We got high picks. John Wall, Bradley Beal, Otto Porter. We were the only team in the NBA who had drafted, signed, and maxed those three players. And we still had room to bring in a transformative free agent. Didn't work. Injuries happen. And so we did get stuck in mediocrity. And, we had a lot of good players, just couldn't get through. And so if you end up making the playoffs, missing the playoffs by a couple of games, it's the worst place to be. And so strategically, we just said, it's time. And if you're going to make a big pivot like that, you have to make the investment in facilities and patience, bring in new people who have experience in those kinds of environments. And Michael and Will have been very, very impressive in what they're doing. We're still in this deconstruction stage, which is what we're going to be in with Capital One Arena. We have to knock a lot of stuff down before we can start to rebuild. And my vibe is, this last draft to get 3 picks in the first round, that was exactly the kinds of moves that we should be doing. I think this is going to be a long process, but there's no shortcut. And so, but I will tell you, Friday's game, preseason game, was the best attended preseason Wizards game since 2018, and we were able to sell more tickets than we did to the Caps preseason game. So I think the fans are excited. I think young players get them highly motivated.
For sure, and it's an exciting time with those 3 first-round picks. Last thing I'll ask you, Ted, is through that process and then restarting it again, was obviously, I'm not trying to discount the fact that luck plays and all the things that you mentioned, but if you're not trying to find lessons and things in life, I guess you don't get to a position that like where you are now. So was there something you learned about building an NBA team going through it the first time around, seeing how maybe even it can go wrong in ways outside of your control that you take into this one, that as you ask Michael and Will questions to just play your role in this, that you're like, hey, I'm thinking about this in the back of my mind?
Well, I think culture becomes really, really important. Being able to recruit players and early on make sure that they're the right caliber of player that understand the opportunity that they have in being a high pick and their responsibility to the community and the fan base. I also think health is really important. I think that, so many teams have been waylaid by their number one picks. When Derrick Rose retired the other day, there's some people that forgot, like, he was MVP, and he was massively talented and great, and then just had this series of injuries. And so we want to make sure that's part of the investment that we're making, just world-class in everything that we're doing around the science of care for these players. But then you need the players and their people and infrastructure to realize that's part of their social responsibility. They have to adhere to the protocols, adhere to the plans. And I think there's been enough data that's out there that says if players can stay on the court, they can sign that one extra contract, they can make a lot of money, that they'll start to listen. And so we're going to cast our lot with young players and try to keep them within this new culture. And when I look at the people that have surrounded Michael and Will, I think they were telling us the other day that since they've joined, players, coaches, employees, we have more than 50 new people. So we're turning around the whole organization, because it just didn't get us to be, the previous organization just didn't get us to be playoff caliber. And then once you make the playoffs, it's you get those lessons in the playoffs, and can you improve from time to time and series to series. And so it's going to be a long, hard road, but I think the fans are up for it. We're certainly up for it, and we had no other choice. So I'm very committed to it.
Ted Leonsis, the chairman of Monumental Sports. Ted, thank you so much.
Thank you.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. I'm Craig Hoffman. Thank you for checking us out. If, say, you got a breaking news alert that Jamin Davis was let go, and you're like, hey, I would like some coverage on the radio or on YouTube or on the Odyssey app, and you tuned in and you found us for the first time, we do this every single day from 4 to 7 o'clock. And on Tuesdays in particular, it's a very special day around here because for a little segment we call Not My Beat, I used to be a beat reporter who covered the team, and now nothing's my beat. I talk about whatever I want. It's the beauty of it. We bring in someone with some elevated expertise at 5 o'clock. And on Tuesdays, that person is our friend Mitch Tischler.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Of course, Mitch is a longtime producer extraordinaire for Monumental Sports, previously NBC Sports Washington, and the co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast with JP Finley. Mitchell, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I appreciate the rundown of the long resume.
We just got to let the people know that we got some serious expertise around here, at least on the phone. And then there's also me.
Get out of here.
All right. That would be for a very awkward show. That's actually me getting out of here is Anthony's nightmare. Some producers, Mitch, they want to actually host the show. Anthony, would you ever want to actually host the show?
For about 5 minutes.
Okay, that's all. Thank you. You just got your 5 seconds. That's good enough for Anthony for right now. Mitch, we thought that this would be a light content day. We'd have to really dig deep because that Carolina game was only so interesting. And then the Commanders cut Jamin Davis. What's your reaction to that news, and how much of it is about the former administration and how much of it is about the current one?
I mean, I want to keep it about the current one because I think we've kicked the dead horse of how bad the previous regime was at drafting and pretty much everything that they did here in the 4 years. I appreciate that this regime tried to take on a project like Jamin Davis and tried to, reinvent him and give him an opportunity to, reinvent his career and create a cutout for where he could possibly help this team. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out that way. And, I think you got to give them credit for, trying to think outside the box and trying to find something to do with a player who doesn't really, doesn't really fit a particular mold. And it's unfortunate for Jamin that that didn't work out. But, they gave him an opportunity. And what I do like about this regime is that when they find a player who can't help them or it's time to move on from them, there is no, dragging their feet. There is no kind of play in the game of, he's a former first-round pick, we should keep him, blah, blah, blah. They decide he can't help, time to move on, bring someone in who can, and keep this thing moving.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really important point to underscore here, which is, I want to talk about Jamin specifically, and it's on some level give him flowers, which I know feels very weird on the day he's released, but I'll get there in a second. I think with what I appreciate about this organization is Jamin was their best option until now. They've got to make roster moves because there's only 53 spots, and they decided that, hey, the work we've done with Jamin is worth it. He's gotten to a place that this is the best guy we've got, and we're going to keep him until we have a better option. And then they do, and it's not this game of, he's a first rounder, he's this, he's that. It's who's going to be the best guy for us? Does he fit what we want to be? Jamin at least fit what they wanted to be from an effort standpoint, and then obviously from a skill standpoint, there was some to be desired. But I do think this is purely like a football, what's best for us right now decision, and there's literally no other considerations, especially for a guy. We got this question in the YouTube chat. Here's the answer. There's no financial implications here. They were going to have to pay Jamin's cap number regardless the rest of the season, whether he's on the team or not. So essentially, he is cut for free. It's just the money that was salary now becomes dead money, and it counts the exact same amount on the cap. It just moves columns. So to me, this is purely a football decision and one made in a dynamic way, not in anything that's narrative-driven, Mitch.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that it's a football decision is what's important here because it isn't, it isn't a public perception decision. It isn't let's stick it to this guy type of decision. These are guys that come in here and they're making their calls the best they can with what they can do. And you look at how beat up the defensive line was last week, and you have the Dorrance Armstrong injuries, obviously, the John Allen one, and Javonte Jean-Baptiste as well. You had a bunch of injuries, and you still had a guy who was only able to find the field for 16 snaps against a Carolina team in a 40-7 blowout. I mean, I don't know what more what more indication you need that this guy isn't important to what this coaching staff and what this team wants to get to than the fact that in a 40-7 blowout, this guy still only saw the field 16 times. It had run its course, and I'm happy that this storyline, this conversation, isn't something that has to hang over this team for the rest of the season.
Mitch Tischler, co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast, with us for his weekly visit on the Team 980. So the question you always ask about a first-round pick when it doesn't work out is, like, why didn't it work out? And I think for Jamin, like, you have to give him the credit that when it came to this season with this group and this position change, he tried his best. Playing defensive end in the NFL is harder than hell. Like, it's really, really difficult. And I don't think he's particularly set up for that. And he gave it the old college try. Ultimately, he didn't pass it. No qualms about him being released. But when you look at the bigger picture of why Jamin Davis didn't work in D.C. as the 19th overall pick, what's your best shot at that answer?
I think that he wasn't quite the player that Ron Rivera and company had hoped that he was. You know, you look at this roster and it's riddled with guys with high relative athletic scores, and Jamin Davis is one of those guys. But you also have players like Chase Young who have super high RAS scores as well, are super athletic, and for whatever reason it just doesn't translate to the football field, whether it's instincts, whether it's coaching, whether it's positioning, whatever it may be. You have a player who has all of the physical tools but wasn't able to find a way to make big plays on Sundays. And, you know, aside from this season where he never really had a lot of opportunity, he had 3 years there where he was playing a lot of football. And certainly he found his way from time to time into big plays, but far too often he was out of position. Far too often he was part of the reason that the defense gave up big plays, both in the run game and the pass game. I mean, you know, you go back to the whole, you know, one of the reasons that they wanted to draft him was how he performed against that Florida team and Kyle Pitts. Meanwhile, Kyle Pitts went for 99 yards and 3 touchdowns in the game that they lauded, you know, Jamin Davis's incredible, you know, coverage skills against. I think that it was a player who was maybe a little bit overdrafted and then never quite was able to figure out how to be an NFL football player. And that is without mentioning, you know, the off the field shenanigans, which were their own issues with multiple big speeding tickets and arrests, and whether he's going to spend time in jail for one of those speeding tickets. He's a guy who, you know, never really found his place here in Washington, both on the field and off, and ultimately he's moving on somewhere else.
Yeah, and then again, could be in the locker room tomorrow. It wouldn't surprise me if they bring him back on the practice squad, unless they feel like they can go another direction and find someone else on the edge. But they also might be like, yeah, it's not really worth it. So we'll see. Mitch Tischler with us here on the Hoffman Show. Okay, back to the game on Sunday, Mitch. It's a 40-7 win against a team that is barely an NFL team at the moment, not very talented and banged up. What, if anything, do you take out of that game, which is obviously interesting because of just how well the defense did, nearly pitching a shutout, and the fact that the offense put up their 40 with, of course, I guess 33, 7 of that on the pick six, but 30-plus points with Marcus Mariota?
I mean, I take a lot away from it. I've been listening to, you know, some other radio programs and some callers and on social media, folks kind of poo-pooing this win and being like, oh, Carolina was 1-5 heading into the game. They're terrible, all these different things. This is who the Washington Commanders have been. This is what the Washington football team was. This is what the Washington Redskins team was back in the day. These were bad teams that used to get beat up on by other teams, and other teams used to do this to them on a regular basis. Washington is showing the rest of the NFL kind of where they land in this echelon of teams. They might not be the Ravens yet. They might not be the Bills or the Chiefs, or a team that you expect is going to win, you know, could compete for a Super Bowl this season. But they're also showing you that they've taken a big step up as to who they are as a franchise. And part of that is beating up on bad teams. They beat up on the Panthers badly. They beat up on the Browns. All you can do is play the teams in front of you. And I think when you see a game like Sunday where, despite losing their quarterback, which could have been easily, you know, the air could have left the building and the team is woe is me because, you know, Jaden got hurt in the first, you know, quarter of a football game, but that wasn't the case. And not only did Marcus Mariota step up and play well and Cliff Kingsbury called a spectacular game offensively. The fact that the defense steps up as well, and we're getting those turnovers and getting those stops and putting the offense in a position to be successful is a big step up for this team and for this organization. All you can do is play what's in front of you, and the fact that they keep beating up on these bad teams is impressive because for so long these are games that would be played close. The team might lose, the team might win, whatever it may happen. Right now, there's a bad team on the schedule. You can be confident that this team is going to step up and play well.
For sure. There is a professionalism to them that has never existed in the time that I've covered the team, I think in the time that you've covered the team. Dare I say, in the time that John Keim has covered the team, like it has been a long, long time. I guess the only thing that I would follow up with, Mitch, then is to say, okay, there's still a skill level and a test level that if you try to project it forward is a little more convoluted. Ultimately, the professionalism is good, but how confident are you if Jaden doesn't play, which at this point on a Tuesday is very, very if. We'll know more tomorrow depending on how much he practices. But if Jaden were to be unable to go against Chicago, how confident are you that this offense can perform against a Chicago defense that is very, very good?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a much better test this week. Listen, after Marcus Mariota, after that first series, he was 0 for 3. He finished the game 18 of his last 20, 205 yards, 2 touchdowns, moved the ball effectively, and that was after they ran the ball in the first half for 180 plus yards. It wasn't like they came out in the second half and said, hey, we have our backup quarterback in, let's run the ball, let's get out of here and move it. They continue to throw the ball, they continue to press the gas, and I like to see that. And obviously the Bears are much tougher defense, but I do think that you'll see them be a little more balanced, especially as the game moves on. They're going to run the ball with Brian Robinson a little bit more. I think Jeremy McNichols will see the ball, and the big thing is Marcus Mariota isn't the same dynamic player that Jaden Daniels is, but he's similar in the way that he runs the offense. And left hand up for me, I didn't think Marcus Mariota was a good backup quarterback for this team because what we saw in the preseason and in training camp wasn't particularly strong. But to go out there and play the way they did against the Panthers and pick it right up and be able to move that offense is impressive. And I think that it's going to be incumbent on what Cliff Kingsbury continues to do with this offense. I loved his play calling, his play design. From early in that game, you're seeing a coach who is sequencing his plays. The long run from Jaden Daniels, the one that I guess he ultimately got hurt on last week, they ran that same exact look, that same play against the Ravens, except he handed it off to Eckler, who got 5-6 yards. That time he faked the handoff and obviously took it around the edge and had a lot of open space. I love when you see coaches and you can see the sequencing where they set up teams not just in game but week to week and game to game, and you can show them a certain eye candy 1 week and come back in 2, 3, 4 weeks from there and play off that same expectation that they've seen that play before. And Cliff's doing a really good job of doing that. And I think Marcus can step right in and continue to run this offense. And it might not be the same dynamic level that Jaden is, but at the same time, I think that Marcus can get the job done.
Yeah, the Ben Sinnott touchdown was the exact same kind of thing. They had set up that, zone read in the red zone, getting out on the edge with the arc blocking tight end, and then all of a sudden, instead of blocking, Sinnott slips into the corner, and you got an easy touchdown. So Cliff's doing a tremendous job. My one concern, and I feel like when I say concern, it's probably overstating it to an extent, but my one I wonder, if you will, is that was glorified 7-on-7. Carolina's pass rush was completely non-existent. And I do wonder if Marcus is under more pressure against the Bears, how that offense performs and how he performs. Because also, when you don't have any pressure, you don't have any negative plays. They're running the mess out of the ball. They're not going to do that as consistently. And so there just weren't hey, it's 2nd and 13 or 3rd and 9. We need you to ball here, and the blitz is going to be dialed up. He didn't have to face any of that, and that's just not realistic for NFL football. At least it's not supposed to be, but I guess Cliff has found ways to avoid it in multiple games this season, and we'll see.
Yeah, and you know what? And the offensive line has played well, and I was concerned when Marcus came in that, he was going to expose the offensive line a little bit because he's not quite the same athlete that Jaden is, and quite frankly, that wasn't the case. And part of it is a beat-up, bad Panthers D-line, linebacking core that that they have there. But at the same time, there were no breakdowns, there were no misplay calls, there were no delay of games, penalties, these things that sometimes happen when backup quarterbacks come in. And so, I think it's okay to be optimistic here. And I think, to me, the one place where I am concerned with Marcus is just with his arm strength and his ability to get the ball to outside the numbers. But that's something that, his timing and his experience in getting the ball out early hopefully will help kind of counteract any lack of arm strength that he has. But, from what we've seen, I am confident that the offense is going to continue to move the football at a relatively good pace, whether it's Jaden or Marcus Mariota in there.
Mitch Tischler, co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Last thing, of course, Mitchell, would be the defense. There's one drive where they're tested. It ends in a pick six. Ultimately, that's good. Is there anything that you took from this game on the defensive side, either of concern or of quelling concern? Because this Carolina offense coming into the week was actually pretty good with Andy Dalton. Like they had been fairly consistent, and Washington just absolutely dump trucked them. They get the game flow on their side early. But what do you take out of this game defensively that you think is relevant moving forward?
I think it was just a confidence builder for the most part. That's the biggest thing I take away from it. Certainly big for Emmanuel Forbes to get that interception. We're looking at 2 straight weeks here where Dante Fowler has been a big part of the pass rush and has made big plays. I think he's starting to, forgive the pun, turn the edge a little bit here. But to me, the biggest thing I look at is the run game, because, without John Allen, there was concern that the interior of that defense was going to get beat up a little bit and, continued to give up big time yards on the ground. And Chuba Hubbard had done a pretty good job. He was averaging 5+ yards a carry, and he comes in and gets 17 carries and averages, 3 a pop, give or take. And I think you saw, the interior of that D-line step up. And I think a lot of it, you have to give Fedarian Mathis and John Dane, I think, a lot of credit for what they've done. Johnny Newton as well. And I love, what Joe Witt has done with this D-line, because you see him lining up with those 3 D linemen out there, and then your 4th guy is either Frankie Louvu or Dante Fowler coming around the edge. And I think the 3 big guys up there did a good job of stuffing up that offensive line and not giving them a ton of room to run around and opening up the lanes for those linebackers to step up and make plays in the run game.
Yeah, and I think Big Phil specifically deserves a ton of credit for how he's been able to hold the line. And just that's his job, is to eat blocks, and he's doing a tremendous job of it. And I think you see the difference when he's in there. Mitch Tischler, you can get much more from him and JP Finley on the Beltway Football Podcast, which is not only producing episodes basically every day during the season, but is live on the Monumental Sports app after each and every game. Mitchell, always a pleasure, sir. See you Sunday, and talk to you next week.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much for having me.
As always, it is our pleasure. That's Mitch Tischler, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, the news of the day is that Jamin Davis has been released. Well, this morning, we didn't know that was going to be the news of the day when we recorded Take Command, yet we talked about a relevant topic anyway, which is how the Commanders have kind of zigged in a year that a lot of teams are zagging. And zagging is playing bad football thanks to decisions made in the draft that has left their roster completely depleted. How has there been so much just horrendously bad football? And how have the Commanders avoided falling into that trap with the moves that Adam Peters has made in year 1? A really fascinating, wide-ranging football-y conversation between me and Logan that we will let you hear next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. There's only one Odyssey app, Anthony. There's not 3 Odyssey apps. Just one.
Yep.
The one and only. I don't know what's wrong with me. Here's the deal. There's a lot of bad football being played in the NFL. I'm talking a lot. And obviously the Commanders have absolutely put a whooping on the Carolina Panthers, who are real bad, the Cleveland Browns, who are real bad. There's some other teams, Tennessee, Vegas, New England, who are just atrociously bad football teams. Why? That's an actual interesting question as we discuss the NFL and try to, through a Commander's lens, make sense of these absolute butt whoopings. Like, okay, what do you want to do? Win 70-0? That'd be cool, but that's not reasonable. It still is NFL football. But why is it happening? What do we make of it? And how have the Commanders, by the way, avoided the same pitfalls that many of these really terrible, bad football teams have? That was a discussion we brought to take command this morning at the end of our show. The first 30 minutes was a film breakdown, which, of course, you can check out wherever you get your podcast. Just search Take Command. Full episode also at the Team 980 on YouTube. But I think that question becomes even more interesting now that the Commanders have cut yet another former first-round pick in Jamin Davis this afternoon. So without further ado, the conversation that Logan and I had about bad ball and the good ball being played in D.C. Wrapping up the show today with the discussion of something that we have left behind mostly on this podcast, bad football. But it keeps chasing the Washington Commanders. Luckily, it's not infecting the Commanders anymore. But, man, there is some bad football being played around the NFL right now. In fact, you could put a number on it and say, Logan, it's historically bad. The folks who do DVOA, they've got kind of a threshold of just horrendous football at 30%. If you're 30% worse than the league average, play in, play out, offensively, defensively, special teams combined, they've never had 5 teams through 7 weeks at minus 30%. They got 5 this year. Carolina, Cleveland, New England, Miami, Las Vegas, Tennessee, Jacksonville, and New York are really struggling as well. There's a lot of bad football being played. And you have teams like the Commanders who are absolutely taking advantage of it, as they should, bamboozling these bad teams. But when we take it out of the statistical realm and put it in the actual on-field discussion, Logan, what to you stands out as the bad football, and is it worse than you remember seeing in the league as a product as a whole?
Yeah, I don't know if it's worse. Because you're so focused on your own thing, like when you're playing. I think the thing that jumps out to me is, I think quarterback play in general is not as good. I think when Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, when all those guys retire, you're going to get worse quarterback play across the board. And I think you see that kind of throughout the NFL. And I think everyone's like, oh, defenses are striking back. I think offenses have just regressed because the talent at the number one, the most important position in the NFL is not what it's been. And we're kind of waiting for the next influx of guys to kind of build, like Trevor Lawrence obviously plays in Jacksonville, and he was supposed to be the second coming, but has not quite reached that, of those guys we just mentioned, where you're talking about him in the same vein as Andrew Luck, for example.
Right.
So I think that to me is like the number one driver. I think defenses are getting a little bit smarter. I think another thing that I think is maybe kind of overlooked is there's been this huge push from an analytics standpoint to stop running the football. So you've got all these roster constructions that are built to just throw the football, and defenses are like, cool, we're just going to play coverage all the time. And it's made it really hard for young quarterbacks specifically to be successful. And I think when you look at the LA Chargers, for example, where Harbaugh's like, we're going to go back, we're going to play 80s football, we're going to run the ball, we're going to possess the ball, we're going to win in a last-second exchange because we're an understaffed roster, you see the advantages of kind of playing that smash mouth style in today's NFL because it deleverages the quarterback, it shortens the game, it limits the number of possessions your defense is on the field. So I think it's kind of a combination of things. Like the league was kind of evolving and projecting to this quarterback-centric model, and then all of a sudden their quarterbacks are all gone, and you're having to repopulate those things, right? And so I don't think the league has adjusted quite yet to the lack of quarterback talent, if that makes sense.
For sure. So there's 2 things off that I think are really interesting. One, you look at the 5 teams that are below that 30% threshold: Carolina, Cleveland, New England, Miami, Vegas.
And those are all teams, especially the worst two, Carolina and Cleveland, are the worst two offenders of this in the league, of investing, putting all their eggs in one quarterback basket, and then that quarterback fails. When I'm not necessarily saying that it's on the quarterback, especially in Bryce Young's case. Like, he was drafted 1-1 overall into one of the worst situations we can ever remember in the NFL. Watson's a different story. But in Cleveland, they trade for Watson coming off the ACL. Obviously, we have no idea what's going on with any of the legal stuff. And he comes in and he's awful. But they not only gave him that much guaranteed salary and kill their salary cap, but they give up a bunch of draft picks as well. And so they're counting on him to elevate what is going to be, by nature, because of what was spent on him monetarily and draft pick wise, a depleted roster. He's instead one of the worst quarterbacks we've seen, and now you have an unmitigated disaster situation for them offensively. And the same token, they kind of did the same thing to Bryce Young. They gave up a ton of talent. They gave up DJ Moore and multiple picks for the right to draft Bryce Young. And he comes in and he's a rookie. He can't elevate anything because he's a rookie.
I just have to look this up just for fun. This is a crazy thing. Like, so to get Bryce Young, the Bears had to give the 9th overall pick, which ended up being their starting right tackle, Darnell Wright, the 61st overall pick, which is a starting cornerback, Tyreek Stevenson. They had to give up a first-round pick the following year, which is Caleb Williams, and they had to give up a second-round pick in 2025 and their best receiver, DJ Moore. Like, think about that. That's 4 starting players, 5 starting players if you count the traded player, 5 starting good players for them for 1 player, and it just shows you, I think, like we've talked about this ad nauseum, and we talked about this in the context of the Commanders quite a bit, is the environment and the ecosystem is so important. So if you're like, everyone's like, oh, we got to trade, get these people in here. It doesn't always. You got to trust. You got to trust the process. Trust the process when it comes to team building, and the tried and true model is building through the draft. So when you're just hemorrhaging draft picks for this one person, it very rarely works out. And I think you brought up a great point. Carolina and Cleveland, both really good examples of, like, when that guy's not elevating your team, you're going to be in a bad spot.
Yeah, and that's why Jaden is so valuable here, is because they acquired him naturally. Like, they did not have to give up anything to take the quarterback at 2 overall, and then they got it right. And it shows when that guy can elevate the roster, like, oh my God, even if your roster's not where you want it to be, you can be really good. And I think that kind of gets to, like, New England obviously is in a mega rebuild because, you know, it's funny. I heard Belichick making fun of the Giants the other day, and I'm like, look, you're the greatest coach of all time. You have 8 rings. Who am I to say anything? But, like, dude went a decade without a rookie draft pick getting to a second contract. Like, that's why New England's in a talent deficit. Miami obviously was a little bit different situation. They're built in a very, very, very specific way to which Tua is a perfect fit. Tua goes down, nobody else can run their offense, and all of a sudden they stink. And then Vegas is just, I don't know what they're doing. They're an absolute nightmare.
Well, it's a quarterback situation there too. You know, like, they just didn't have a long-term. Like, I think it's good. They're all good they're all good examples in different ways of not having a contingency at the quarterback spot. Like, if you're going to build an offense like that, like, I love Mike McDaniels, I love their offensive coordinator, I love how they've built that team. But if you're going to mortgage on a specific quarterback style of play, you need to make sure your backup is similar, right? It's the same thing that they did with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore for a long time with, like, the Huntleys and all these different kind of mobile scrambling type guys, the Josh Johnsons of the world. Robert Griffin was there for a little bit. When he goes down, you can still run your offense. And I think Cliff, you know, we just talked about Marcus and what he did in Carolina. Having a type at quarterback and just being able to be like, okay, we can kind of still exist in the same ecosystem we want is extremely important. So it's not only the starter, it's your contingency if something happens to that guy. And, like, Miami's a perfect example of that. Las Vegas, I think they were hoping to be elevated by receiver talent, but the offensive line wasn't there. New England is a unmitigated disaster. You mentioned some of the talent deficiencies and how that started 10 years ago, you know, in terms of them building this roster out. And so they all have their own issue. And those are really maybe extreme examples, like the New England's, the Vegas's, New England and Vegas specifically, because the talent on the roster is so limited. But the quarterback is also part of that equation for sure.
For sure. And those two now in first year new GMs, so they can hopefully rebuild. And in New England's case, it looks like they got their draft pick probably right as well. If Drake can continue to develop, he's actually given them a little bit of life, albeit in 2 losses in these 2 games. And clearly there's a long way to go for him with some of the picks he's thrown. But I think the other part of it that's really interesting on the quarterback front is, and I'm stealing this point from Robert Mays, our friend over at The Athletic, and something he said on their show. Because of the way the contracts work now, especially post like 2011, I think is when the rookie scale came in.
Right.
It is so much more valuable to have a rookie quarterback that the 28-year-old veteran doesn't really exist anymore at the quarterback position, where it used to be like, hey, can we go find a cheap veteran? Because if we take a guy 7th overall, that's the 3rd best quarterback in a draft, we're going to have to pay him stupid money. Well, now we take that 7th guy, and like if he doesn't work, we'll take another one next year. Like we've seen some teams do that. We saw Arizona when Cliff was there. Like Josh Rosen, they take it 11th, and it's not really working. They have the first pick the next year. It's like, we'll take Kyler. And so I think that the evidence point for that of like how that can be really valuable of guys that actually have experience, have been through some stuff and survived is Geno Smith, Sam Darnold now with Minnesota, Baker Mayfield in Tampa. Like those are good quarterbacks who were very high draft picks in Darnold and Baker's case and needed some time in the league and needed to get to different situations. Like Darnold going to the Jets was a nightmare. Baker, the up and downs of the Cleveland Browns, like get him out of there and get him in a more stable situation and, have him run through the Sean McVay car wash along the way. And all of a sudden, like he's a pretty freaking good quarterback. He's not going to be a top 10 guy, but he's going to be between 10 and 15. And so the value of that 28-year-old, let's call it veteran, who's seen some stuff, been through some things, has a working knowledge of the league that is competent as a professional, like that's not a route a lot of teams go. And like Vegas is, I think, a good example of that, where it's like they probably could have gotten someone like that, and their best swing at that was Gardner Minshew.
Right.
And instead, you see what happens when you don't have either the young guy that you're developing or the competent, mid-level guy in the league that can actually operate an offense consistently week in, week out.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. And so again, like to that point, like offenses are struggling just generally this year, but look at the kind of the youth movement across the NFL. And I think that's exactly the reason why we're getting that, right? Is all these young quarterbacks are more financially viable. And I think another great example to that, add to that list, is like the Joe Flacco's of the world. Like look at the Indianapolis Colts offense. Like I think Anthony Richardson is tremendously talented. I really want him to kind of figure out in a Josh Allen type of way, because he has the physical skill set in the same way that Josh Allen does. But the offense is better with Joe Flacco. It's more efficient with Joe Flacco. And it's not because Joe Flacco is a more physically gifted player. It's because he's got more experience. It's the same thing with the Bakers and the Genos. Like they've been around long enough. They've learned the position enough. And I think that's something people forget, like fans forget, is that it takes a long time to get comfortable with a certain level of NFL efficiency. And I think that's one of the reasons why Jaden Daniel is so incredibly unique and special, because it seems like he's just every week is just figuring it out at a rate that is kind of unprecedented in a way that kind of CJ Stroud did last year. And I hate making that comparison because it puts a lot of pressure on Jaden. But that's unique. That's like the unicorn, right? Think about, Josh Allen and how bad the Bills' offense was before he like figured it out in year 3 or 4. I forget exactly when that was. But it takes time. And so the NFL offense is going to be less efficient as the quarterback position stays young. And you just gave a good reason as to why that's going to be that way for a long time. And I do think teams maybe should zig a little bit here and say, hey, who is a guy like a Joe Flacco, like a Baker, like a Geno, like a Sam Darnold that we can kick the tires on and give them an opportunity to play football while we have a young guy on the roster. So I think I'm trying to think who did this. I think San Francisco was maybe a good example of this, where they drafted 2 quarterbacks. They had Jimmy Garoppolo at a fairly good number and let those guys kind of come along in the wings for a little bit. I think that's got to be the model, because you're not hurting your offensive efficiency the same way, and you're getting those guys up to speed at what it means to play NFL quarterback. And again, like right now, we look like we're in the land of milk and honey as the Commanders, because Jaden Daniels seems to have accelerated that process on his own with Cliff's help and obviously Dan's help as well. But I think that's got to be the model moving forward.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, because then you're like, well, we don't have our guy for the future, and we're going to be too good to be up there in the draft and get him. But it's like, if you can develop a guy while he's learning behind, a really competent guy, like obviously the best version of that, and this guy was a first-round pick, but like Pat Mahomes learning behind Alex Smith had a huge impact on his career.
Jordan Love, great example
Jordan
too.
Love, Aaron Rodgers before him behind Favre. Like it is a proven model to an extent. There's no foolproof way to get the right guy at quarterback. But I would also say, Logan, I'd be curious your thoughts on this, especially is could the same be true or said about other positions? Because the financial incentives are the same at all positions. It's more intensified at quarterback, because if I can pay a quarterback $5 million whenever the top ones are making $60 million, I'm paying 1/12 versus like, hey, Brock Bowers is amazing, but he is not nearly as much of a discount compared to what the top tight ends are making, even if he's better than a lot of those guys. So there is like the financial part of this, but I do think that middle class element, you could look at other areas of the Commanders roster and say, how are they avoiding the bad ball trend? Like Nick Allegretti may not be the world's greatest left guard. He's a pro. Like he's a legitimate bona fide pro. Same thing on the other side. Like Bobby Wagner is not Hall of Fame Bobby Wagner necessarily anymore, but like that dude knows how to play football, and he is helping everyone around him. Luvu's kind of, I think a higher end, upper middle class, if you will, and potentially based off his usage this year could become a star. But like the Commanders have found a bunch of guys who just know how to play, put them on the field together in a well-coached scheme, and like lo and behold, they're 5-2 because they know how to play good NFL football.
Yeah. I think a great example of that is like offensive line. Everyone always bemoans offensive line talent and offensive line development. And I really love, initially I was kind of like, I don't know how this is going to work out with Brandon Coleman and Cornelius Lucas, but I love the idea of getting him reps in a controlled setting, and he's not starting each and every week. And think about how much better he's gotten, Brandon Coleman, over the course of this season without having to put everything on his plate. Like to your point, we're so conscientious of the environment that the quarterback's coming into. But I think with offensive linemen, it should be something kind of similar. If you have the opportunity for a guy to develop, like the worst thing you can do, I think about Andrew Thomas in New York, where you're just like, hey, go figure it out. And it's like, he wasn't ready. And again, 2 years from then, he was ready. Or Colton Miller, the guy from Las Vegas, like he wasn't ready early in his career, but now he's ready. He's one of the best left tackles in football. Like, what if you could mitigate the ouch of that with a veteran presence? And I think when you look at the New York Jets, is another great example. They draft Olu Fashanu in the first round, but what they do, they brought in Morgan Moses and they brought in Tyron Smith. So this player who's a little bit green can get some work in kind of a rotational setting. And I think maybe that's a better way. Again, if we're going to complain about it, offensive line's not developing, what are some different tools we can use? And so I do think that this, again, we're a Commanders show, but I'm being genuinely honest here. I think that's a good way, what they're doing with Brandon Coleman, to be like, hey, let's bring you along in a slow, controlled fashion. And you're going to end up at the end of this year with 700 snaps, which is great. But it's not going to be, 1,500, because you're not going to have to play every single game this season, or I might be off, whatever that is, 350, whatever the snap number is. But I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Even some of the stuff they've done with Mike Sainristil, he's not playing every single snap. I think that's good because you're limiting some of their exposure. So, again, I'm not sure if they did that intentionally, but it's an interesting model that I would be curious to see if other teams apply to other positions, to your point.
I think especially if Washington continues to be successful and these guys come out at killing it, everyone's always trying to figure out what other teams are doing. And it's like, this seems smart. And I would be almost stunned. Actually, I would be stunned if it wasn't intentional, because everything that Adam Peters does is very, very intentional. And he's the one who sets up the program, if you will. And Quinn was obviously on board with it, if not agree with it, and would have brought the same idea somewhere else. So like, I imagine like when those two met for the first time, and there's all these different names from Ben Johnson, Raheem Morris, to all the other candidates that we were talking about, and they sat down and they did that first interview, and all of a sudden there's a couple stories that popped that like Adam Peters and Dan Quinn really hit it off, and Quinn should be seen as one of the favorites, if not the favorite, coming out of the first round interviews. I wonder if that's one of the things they talked about in terms of like how they really want to build this thing from the ground up. And I think that other teams would be smart to emulate it, and you have to find the ways within what you want to be as a football team, within your salary cap structure, with all of that, with the picks that you have, because it's a lot easier to do, by the way, and one of the best quarterback classes that we've seen in a long time. We have the second overall pick. And by the way, the guy who's going to go second is an exact perfect to a T fit for what you want to do and who you want to be from a character standpoint. That certainly helps you. I don't want to say skip steps, but graduate a few steps quickly.
Process, yeah.
But
and I mean,
there's other teams that definitely are going to be taking pieces of this.
And sure, and even with the Cornelius Lucas thing and the Brandon Coleman thing, you need a Cornelius Lucas, and those guys just aren't floating around everywhere, right? Like there are challenges to this, that they've done a good job with talent evaluation, but finding those pieces is super important. And we're kind of digressing, but like the Commanders have just done this process over this last 2 years really well, and I think one of the things that I'm excited for is that they seem, again, to have this long-term vision, which some of these other teams we just talked about don't necessarily
what's the
have.
vision in Las Vegas?
Yeah, like seriously, vision in Vegas, vision in Carolina right now. What are they doing? Cleveland, same thing. They started Dorian Thompson-Robinson in the game. As opposed to
Jameis was the third stringer.
Is that you want him to be your starter moving
I
forward?
wonder if that's what's going to happen this week. Is Jameis starting this week, or is DTR starting this week? I don't know, but DTR was the backup. So we'll find out. Yeah, Carolina, I think maybe a little bit more this year than certainly last year. They were like, oh, let's invest in the offensive line. Dan Morgan seems to have a little bit more of a clue than whatever Scott
I'm not saying
Fitterer
they have
was
no
doing.
clue, but
also I feel bad for Scott Fitterer and some of the other people that were brought in there, because I think the owner's driving that ship, and we know that that's a bad situation. So you have to have a vision, you have to be able to go execute it, and guys like Zach Ertz become really important, to kind of a safety bridge, if you will, a life raft. Hey, by the way, we're going to make sure that you don't fail because we're going to give you a veteran tight end. And by the way, that veteran tight end is probably also developing Ben Sinnott every day to be your tight end of the future. And next thing you know, Jaden and Sinnott are, I don't want to say Mahomes and Kelsey, but they're going to grow up together with the Commanders, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, what did we just talk about with Carolina? They're starting 3 rookie players, tight end, 2 receivers. They're starting 3 rookie offensive players, and the offense looks like that.
Yeah,
it doesn't have
the
level.
To their credit, Adam Thielen was brought back and he got hurt, and that offense was better when Adam Thielen was in it. There wasn't a very long stretch that Dalton was playing and Thielen was playing, but when it was, they were a significantly better offense.
Right, but we're talking about mitigating and managing risk. We could have been hey, we're going to draft a tight end in the draft. It's going to be awesome, and he's going to develop with Jaden Daniels. But why? If we can manage some of that risk with a guy like Zach, who's a very productive player in the twilight of his career, no doubt. But I watch Zach on the weekends, and I'm like, man, he's still got that dark art of running routes. He understands how to create separation. He's the quarterback security blanket. And like you said, Ben Sinnott's going to learn from him, right? And it helps Jaden Daniels' development because you get a player who's NFL ready, having Terry in there, bringing in Austin Eckler from a pass protection standpoint. All those decisions, were just the right ones. And trusting the evaluation and trusting those guys could still do it is also a big part of that, because how many times have we seen teams bring in guys who were a big name but couldn't get it done? So I just think the whole model of kind of softening the landing, and it does seem very intentional for all of the rookies, was very cool. So
for sure. And by the way, offensive DVOA, the 3rd best offense in the league right now. To bring things full circle, your Washington Commanders behind Baltimore and Buffalo. So it is working to a T. We'll see what they can do on Sunday against Chicago. We will break down that matchup on the Thursday show, so make sure you are subscribed and stay tuned for that. For Logan, I am Craig. Thanks so much for watching and listening to Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command, which has a brand new home.
That's right. You can watch on YouTube at the Team 980.
You can also listen to full episodes in the free Odyssey app, which is now enabled with Apple CarPlay. So we'll just, follow you around. By the way, Anthony, I got a text from Clinton earlier I always love when Clinton texts me my own things. He quite enjoyed me destroying that Bears fan in the chat yesterday. Who, by the way, so there's a Bears fan that got lost and found his way into our YouTube chat yesterday. His name was Carlos, and Carlos got what was coming to him for making a turn down the wrong street. And then Carlos came back into the chat today, started to pop off again, and I put, Carlos doesn't know that he's dead, and posted a link to me destroying Carlos, because we posted it on social media, and then Carlos suddenly disappeared.
I am in tears.
Good.
What?
Adios, Carlos.
Wow.
Au revoir. Goodbye. Sayonara.
Do you think he'll be back tomorrow?
I think he knows his points are not well taken.
Okay.
Speaking of tears, by the way, though, Anthony. See what we did there?
I think so.
Is that a homonym, I believe?
Yes.
Because it sounds the same.
Spelled differently.
Yeah, the old homonym. It's time for our NFL tears, which come with music, which sometimes plays. All right, so here's what we got. We ranked all the NFL teams in 4 tiers, starting with our prime contenders, which means we would not be surprised to see them in the Super Bowl. So last week, we start a couple teams to potentially revisit based off of how they played this week. So let's start off with the ones that I think are easy. The Baltimore Ravens. Checkity, check. They're good?
Yes, no question.
Okay,
Best team in
excellent.
football.
I think that is correct. The Kansas City Chiefs, best record in football.
Mm-hmm.
Checkity, check. The Detroit Lions and Minnesota Vikings and Green Bay Packers and Houston Texans all played each other. We had them all up in prime contenders. So, I think 3 of the 4 get to stay.
Ooh, 3 of the 4. Oh, talk to me, Craig.
But I also could make a case that 2 of these teams that played each other stay and 2 of these teams that play each other go. The ones that I think no doubt stay are Detroit and Minnesota. Like, they played each other in a tit-for-tat game that came down to the final seconds, had a little bit of everything, some offense, some defense, some special teams, good quarterback play, good defensive plays, showed, like, tremendous competitiveness. This was just a great football game where one team ultimately came out ahead, and they both now are, 5-1? Whatever they are. Like
6-1.
6-1. How many weeks have we played? 7?
7.
Cool. They're both 6. Well, Minnesota had a bye. So they're 5-1. Detroit's 6-1.
Yeah.
But Detroit might have also had a bye. The point is, they're both awesome. They both get to stay in my book.
I mean, I agree. They're both 5-1. Just had to fact check that real quick.
That's what I had the first time, Anthony.
I think you were right.
That's what we get for trying to do math.
But this game definitely came down to the wire. It was back and forth. No team really got any momentum. And that's what you love to see. I think it was, again, just 2 heavyweights in the NFC battling, and the game delivered when we needed it most to.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I would pick Detroit again on a neutral field.
And I'm picking the Vikings again.
Okay. And I don't think that's a crazy thing to do, even though you were wrong. So you're good with both those teams staying up.
Yes.
Okay. By the way, I do think, for whatever it's worth, there's going to be more movement on the bottom half this week. I think some teams have solidified themselves as awful.
Yeah.
And so I do think there's going to be more moving down this week than moving up. But I can make an argument that Green Bay and Houston also played a football game that told us a lot about both teams, and that they're not that similar, or that they're very, very similar, but they're actually not belonging in this tier anymore. I think that, like, until Jordan Love stops throwing interceptions, we got a problem against the very, very, very best, the primest of the prime cuts. But they ultimately won the game, and I think the fact that their defense did what they did to Houston is maybe, like, worth balancing out some of the offense stuff, and I do think Love will stop throwing so many interceptions in the long run. Houston, buddy, without Nico Collins, I know they were good a couple weeks ago against the Patriots, but C.J. Stroud threw for 86 yards. 86! They can't stay up. I know this was a close game, I know, hey, if Houston manages the clock better in the final drive, maybe they even win this game. But they didn't. Results matter. Houston Texans. I don't trust you. I think that's what it comes down to. Is like when you do stuff like that, I don't trust you. I think the Texans, now they could change. Nico Collins comes back. They look awesome. Fine, we'll move them back up. Right now, would I be surprised to see them in the Super Bowl? Hell yeah, I would. Houston Texans, bye-bye.
Do you think C.J. Stroud is in a sophomore slump? And that might be a bit of a stretch. He's thrown for 1,600 yards. He has 10 touchdowns, passes, and then 4 interceptions.
I think a little bit, but like not that much. I think there's a lot of stuff around him. Like I think that their skill position guy, like they obviously made the move for Diggs, and Diggs has not been very good. Dude had what, like 9 targets, 3 catches, 30 yards? Like that's abysmal.
5 for 23. Worse.
5 for 20. Oh, that's right. It was 5 for 23 and he had a 17-yarder.
Yeah, that's what it was.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that they had some really good stuff. I think the Mixon's obviously been good. I think they're trying to figure out some stuff offensively. Maybe they're tinkering and trying stuff, and they know they can get back to something. And if that's the case, Bobby Slowick, then go on with your bad self. But I just think there's something off there. Wherever Diggs goes. By the way, there was a quote from Stephon Diggs. Now I wish I written it down. It was incredible. It was just like the most but also least self-aware quote. Basically, he was just like, I'll do whatever I want. And it doesn't matter how many people. And he was talking about like the fight on the sideline or the, yelling at people. He's like, I don't care if I'm by myself.
Yeah.
I'll do whatever I want. And we're like, Stephon, we know. That's why you're no longer in Minnesota or Buffalo. Yeah. You're not one exactly to, I don't back down. Like, we know. Sometimes that's not exactly a valiant thing. Anyway, so Houston, down you go. Agreed?
I'm fine with moving Houston down. I want to leave the Packers, though. I understand
I think
the Jordan Love thing.
I am there, too. I think I'll leave the Packers up. But dang, dude, can you stop throwing the ball to the other team?
Yeah, I agree. But that defense is balling, man.
Yeah.
Defense is balling.
So that means we have the Chiefs, the Ravens, and 3 teams in the NFC North.
Hey, this is, how the NFC West was a couple of years ago? The Rams, the 49ers,
That was one of the years Cliff was in Arizona.
yeah.
And, like, Arizona was, like...
They were 7-1 to start, 7-0 maybe, to start the season,
they were good, and then they obviously fell apart, but, like, yeah,
that was the years DeAndre Hopkins mauled 4 Buffalo Bills in the corner of the end zone.
But who's counting? Yeah. Speaking of the Buffalo Bills, they're in puncher's chance right now. We did our first impression selection show, the show that Tony and I do when we pick our games against the spread. By the way, Anthony, your boy went 11-5 against the spread last week.
Good gracious.
Yeah.
That's really impressive. I'm not gonna lie, because a lot of those games were tough to freaking.
Tony went 5-10. I was like, which one of us is the gambler?
Gosh.
Which means I'm due for like a 2-10 week, 3 weeks in a row,
or 1-13.
But I went a solid 11-5 against the spread last week.
Dang.
I'm on a heater right now.
We gotta get you over there to BetMGM, correct?
The second I start gambling is the second I start losing. Unfortunately, that's the thing. I'm going to keep getting games right as long as I don't make any money off of it.
Smart man.
Ugh. No, dumb man. I need to time my own hot streaks better. Point is, we did that show this morning, and here's the analogy I made about the Bills. I said the Bills every single year are like a friend who's mostly doing really well in life, but like once every 6 weeks, they decide to go out for the weekend, and they have a few too many drinks, and you're just like, man, I thought we were over, like, we're 30 years old, or whatever age you are that's too old to be puking on yourself.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, they just do it, and you're like, I thought we talked about this. And then they get, Monday morning comes around, they're like, man, I'm really sorry, like, that, I gotta be better. And they make the corrections, and they are literally the best friend that you have. They are so reliable, except for that one day every 6 weeks where they puke on their own shoes. And the Bills go through these stretches where they are the best team in football, and then they stink. They play just an absolute egg. And then we're all like, we're not believing in the Bills. And then they slowly but surely work back up. And right as the narrative catches up with them being awesome, they puke on their shoes again. And we're like, son of a... I think the Bills are starting to descend into being the best team in football again for about another 6 weeks. Maybe not better than the Ravens, but like on that category, I want to move the Bills up.
Off that win last week, you want to move them up?
They beat the crap out of whoever. It was Tennessee in the second half.
Yeah,
and
that's the Titans.
They're only going to get better. I know. They're only going to get better with Amari Cooper there. He fixes some serious problems for them.
Can we give them one more week?
Yes. And then next week I get to brag about how right I was.
We got to put the asterisk next to them, though.
Okay. All right. Add the asterisk. You're in the document, too.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if there's another team I want to move up. We just moved the Texans down. The Eagles... I never had a least impressive, the least impressive 28-3 win. It has everything to do with the Giants. Jalen Hurts threw 14 passes in that game. The Bucks, no.
Injury bug is killing those guys.
Yeah. Falcons, no. Steelers, we could put an asterisk there.
We might have to put one next to the Steelers.
Dude, if the Steelers go out and thump this weekend, they also are facing the Giants, and that's going to wind up being the dumbest game on the NFL calendar. Mark my word. The Giants are not going to win that game. The Steelers are not going to blow them out. Like, that's just those two teams when they get together. But if they win and the Commanders can pull off, frankly, if they just play well and then they get Jaden back, we might have a little asterisk versus asterisk game. Washington, it's tempting to move them up after what they did to Carolina, but, like, it was Carolina.
Yeah.
Seattle, nice job. We need more. And then we have the Bears run a bye, and then we have the Niners. We need to have a conversation about the Niners.
Yeah, we need a full, in-depth conversation about these guys.
And then there's some teams that are down in the interesting but not quite good enough that maybe a couple that we could talk about going up, but there's also some that are on a one-way train to Poopsville. We get to that next here on the Hoffman Show, but first let's get an update on the latest in the world of women's sports presented by Wawa. Gotta have a Wawa. All right, let's roll through the rest of our NFL tiers and then our exclusive one-on-one with Kyle Kuzma. We spent a lot of the show talking about the Jamin Davis news, by the way. If you want to hear that, our takes on it, the podcast is up from the first hour of the show, and a great chat about everything Jamin with Mitch Tischler at 5 o'clock as well. You can also rewind in the Odyssey app. But it is 6 o'clock on a Tuesday, and that is when we do our NFL tier rankings. So, Anthony, we've decided the prime contenders. We have decided most of the puncher's chance teams, which includes the Commanders. The San Francisco 49ers, though, they have been in puncher's chance, and they have the double asterisk next to them, meaning something had to go right for them to avoid going down, and it actually went from bad to worse. They lose Brandon Ayuk for the season. They don't look good. Brock Purdy has his worst game that we've seen, and the defense isn't playing any better. I think the San Francisco 49ers, I can't believe it, but they are down in the interesting but not quite good enough tier right now.
Yeah, I mean, the talent is there. We know that, and we've been waiting all season long for the 49ers to figure it out. 7 weeks in, what are they, 3-4, 2-5?
I think they're 3-4.
Yeah, 3-4.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's not good at all, and it got worse. No Debo on Sunday. You lose Brandon Ayuk. You still don't have McCaffrey. The offense got to figure things out. The defense isn't as tenacious and fearful as it used to be. These guys are interesting, Craig.
They are
They're
very
just
interesting.
not good.
But Kyle has done such an outstanding job of hiring defensive coordinators over the years, from Saleh to D'Amico to all the guys they've had. And for whatever reason, even though they went to the Super Bowl, they let go of Steve Wilkes last year. And that has not been as good. And they're missing some guys, but those guys aren't coming back anytime soon. So, San Francisco, you're going down. We said the Chargers could come up. Nope, as we're now firmly in the interesting but not good enough tier. They lost a heartbreaker last night. Yikes. The other team that we considered potentially coming up is the Cincinnati Bengals, who struggled probably more than I would like with the Cleveland Browns, but won the game. Anthony, I think they stay exactly where they were with the double asterisk, meaning if they can put on a show this week, then they're back in a puncher's chance. For right now, though, you got to put together a full game.
Who do they have this week? Let me check.
Oh, it's someone good.
Ooh.
It's like a good test. I can't remember.
They have the Eagles.
Yeah. Go out and put up 35 on the Eagles. 30, hold them under 30, win the football game.
Yeah. I mean, I like your call. Keeping them here. I think it was a 7-point game for like much of the first half. Like, yeah, they didn't come off as a team that has a puncher's chance. Granted, they went on to, put up some numbers. T. Higgins got in the box. Jamar Chase had a good day. But still, we need more. We need more.
I think, look, Cleveland's not great. Their defense is obviously okay, but, like, the Commanders rashed them. The Bengals scoring 17 points, including popping one late. Like, that don't impress me much, as an old country song said. Really not that old. It just made a lot of people feel old. Anyway, the point is, they're not that good. At least yet. Not good enough, as they say. Okay. Cardinals won. Congratulations. You're not good enough. You're still staying where you are. Any other teams that we need to give the Cowboys, you get your shout out for having a bye week. You get to stay where you are.
Yeah. Are you talking about for puncher's chance?
No, no one else is. Is there anybody else that you want to nominate?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. We're about to talk about the teams and whether we consider going down. The Broncos beat the ever-living crap out of the Saints. Broncos stay. The Dolphins are getting Tua back, so they're back in like, hey, let's see what they do territory, but I'm not going to put them down with Tua coming back.
Okay.
Every other team that the Colts get to stay. The Colts are the perfect, interesting, but not good enough team. They are interesting. They got a quarterback who went 10 for 24, and they won a football game. Okay.
Yeah.
You're not like, they could back their way into a wild card spot. Congratulations. You're not worth talking about. You're interesting, but not good enough.
Yeah.
If I haven't mentioned you yet, I'm going to nominate you for a ticket to Poopsville.
Uh-oh.
The no chance tier, which already includes the Cleveland Browns, Las Vegas Raiders, and Jacksonville Jaguars, who, by the way, the Jags, do we pull them out?
No.
Okay.
No.
Even though they beat the crap out of the Patriots? Okay.
No.
Well, that makes one easy. New England Patriots.
Yes.
I know you have Drake May. I know that he's looked good, and that's probably more fun than you've had for the rest of the season. You got smashed by a team that was in Poopsville. You stink. You're in no chance.
Yeah.
Carolina Panthers. This breaks my heart. Team of my childhood, the team of my youth. You're terrible.
Yeah.
You're awful. You're no good. You're going to Poopsville. Anthony, there are 5 teams currently that have a minus 30% DVOA, which means they are 30% worse than league average on every single situation when you average it out.
That's bad stuff.
That's bad stuff. You know who one of those teams is?
Let me guess. The Tennessee Titans.
That is correct,
Oh, my
Anthony.
gosh.
The Tennessee Titans. Welcome to Poopsville. You're terrible. You want to know another team is? Oh, no, just kidding. The Raiders are already there. But there's 5 of them. 5 teams that are minus 30. The Panthers, the Patriots, the Raiders, the Titans, the Browns. They're all that bad as entire football teams.
That's embarrassing, man.
That is embarrassing. The last team that we haven't mentioned, I actually don't know that we mentioned the Rams. The Rams get to stay. They beat the Raiders. Congrats.
Yeah.
You get Cooper Kupp back. See you on Thursday
Thursday.
night. The one team that we haven't mentioned yet is the Giants.
We haven't mentioned. Yeah, we haven't.
They lost to the Eagles 28-3. I don't even think the Eagles are good. And do I think the Giants will be plucky at some point this year? Are the Giants going to be a pain in the butt?
Yep.
Absolutely. You know what they have in terms of the playoffs?
No
chance. Giants.
Hey, that was good.
Welcome to Poopsville.
That was good.
This was the week it was bound to happen. We are now 7 weeks into the season. It was time to stop pretending that some of these teams are interesting. It was time to load up the no chance tier. Yep. The Browns, Raiders, Jags, Patriots, Panthers, Titans, Giants. You all deserve each other. The Jags, you might have a chance to get out of here. Every time I say that, you let me down. Mm-hmm. So try not to suck this week, and maybe you can get a ticket out of here. That is our current NFL tiers. The contenders, we lost some. The puncher's chance, we lost some. Interesting, but not quite good enough. We lost some. Where'd they all go? No chance.
I think there's one team that we didn't really mention or talk about, and that's the New York Jets. But I think they're
that's an overlook.
Away.
That's an overlook on me.
Week away. Aaron, get it together.
Aaron Rodgers is a bad quarterback. Yeah, I said it out loud. It's not 2018 where he's the best freaking quarterback in the league anymore. It's 2024, and that guy stinks at playing NFL quarterback. He might have 1 or 2 good weeks the rest of the season. He's not good. They're not good. But we'll give him 1 more week.
I think them and the Saints. 1 more week.
Oh, no, sorry. I missed the Saints. I got so excited to put the Giants down. The Saints,
yeah.
Sorry, you thought you had escaped?
Nah,
no.
You got to go.
Since week 2, you've been arguably, even though there's all these other teams that I just described that are historically bad, you've been worse than basically all of them. You gave up 50 points to the Broncos. Yeah. Your ticket is one way, destination Sucktown, USA.
Poopsville.
I'm sorry, New Orleans. I really love your city. I love your fan base. It's such a great place to watch a game. Your team is awful. Those are our tier rankings. And there's a lot of tiers to bring it all the way back around homonym style. Homophone? Homonym? What's the difference?
The difference between a homonym and a homophone?
Yeah, is there one?
That I don't know.
All right, we'll look that up in the break, and then when we come back, we'll tell you what the difference is, and then we'll play you our interview with Kyle Kuzma. right, it's the Hoffman Show, a show that is trying to do grammar lessons, homophones, homonyms, homographs. In case anyone's wondering, according to Puzzle Society, homophone, same sound, different spelling. On vacation, I love to wake up and see the sea. Homonym, same sound, same spelling, different meanings. We have to park before we go to the park. So park and park, homonym, same sound, same spelling, different meaning. Homophone, same sound, different spelling, obviously different meanings. And then homograph, same spelling, different sound. The wind was too strong to wind the sail around the mast. So there you go. That's the answer, Anthony. Homophone, same sound, different spelling. Homonym, same sound, same spelling. Homograph, same spelling, different sound.
Oh, man, let's quiz each other after the Kyle Kuzma interview.
Let's not say we did. Here's my chat from Media Day with Kyle Kuzma just 2 days before the Wizards tip off their season. Wizards Media Day with Kyle Kuzma joining us on set for the second straight year. Appreciate you. And I know that you are relatively fresh off of your first ever golf tournament that you hosted.
Yes, I did.
How did that go?
It was a blast. We had a phenomenal time. The first time we had our foundation tournament, we raised $900,000 for single moms and underprivileged kids in our year one, which is
awesome.
Pretty incredible. And I think that's going to really help us in our mission. And then also the golf tournament. I didn't play that well, but I was there for the vibes. And,
and your vibes are always immaculate.
My vibes are always immaculate, and that's what matters in life. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is also my approach at golf tournaments. It's like, can I hit a couple of decent shots, not thoroughly embarrass myself, and have a good time.
Exactly.
So, and hey, you raised a ton of money for a great cause. Speaking of your money, sir, you've been investing. You opened a restaurant during the off season, I believe, out in couple. Like, you have a lot of opportunities, which is amazing. You've got things in fashion, you got food and restaurants, wine, food and wine, other stuff, I'm sure. How did you decide that, like, the restaurant, fast casual kind of scene and doing it here in the DMV was something that you wanted to do?
You don't play basketball forever. You don't make this type of money that we do forever. So you have to, diversify, and you have to, try to do a bunch of different things. Some things hit, some things don't. But I thought that the food business is something that would never go out of fashion. No pun intended. But people need to eat food, and I think for me that was just another entrepreneurial standpoint that I could tap into. So
it's Mahana Grill is what it's called?
Fresh.
Mahana Fresh, yes. And it's out in Gainesville.
Yeah.
So how did you decide that, like, that was the route? Because there's so many, obviously, food and wine's a fairly wide array of possibilities. How did you decide on that?
Just going through the database of our co-founder and our real estate location team. They identified that spot, being in a plaza, being around a bunch of different foods, being right off the highway, kind of really just made sense. We're going to open up more stores. We have another store opening up pretty soon up in Columbia, Maryland.
Yep.
So, just adding a few more to this region and all over the country too, because it's not just a DMV food place. We're national. So
what have you learned about business that you think is maybe applicable to things beyond business, whether it's basketball, just the way you think about the world? Like, what is something you've learned in this process that has, I don't say like fundamentally changed you, but made you think in a way that you enjoyed?
That everything is hard, but everything is also the same as well. Business is a sport. It's no different than basketball. You have a team of people that are working for a common good, trying to build a company. You're going to have your leaders, you're going to have your role players, you're going to have a coach, you're going to have to motivate people, you're going to have to, be very, very competitive in certain spaces, and you're going to have to attack when the time is right. So I think that playing basketball and just playing sports my entire life has really, made me, ready to be an entrepreneur, and it's very fun. It's a very fascinating thing. So
yeah. All right, let's talk some ball.
Please.
when you don't want to talk business the whole time?
It's media day. It's basketball.
Okay, you're ready to get back in the mode.
Exactly.
Okay, so in the spirit of you don't know what you don't know, right? You came into last year, you knew that you were going to have the biggest role you ever had on an NBA team, and then you talked about during the year that there were things that you weren't fully prepared for because how could you have known? You had never done it before. What are some of those things, and then how did you work on them to be ready going into this year?
Every day you got to come in. You can't be blah. You can't just be laid back. Coming into practice after losing 2 in a row. You can't just be, chilling, you know what I mean? From a standpoint of like talking, communicating, being there. My work ethic is always high, and I'm always very serious about my craft and trying to improve and being professional, right? But, every day is a new day, but you have to remain the same at the same time and keeping the same energy at all times. I think is very, very important. And, I'm very, very excited for this year because everything I didn't know, I do know now. And I think that's going to really help me out individually and collectively as a team because I'm here. I'm here for my teammates. I'm here for DC. And I'm here to continue to build what everybody here is trying to build. So
one of the things that I think watching last year and I won't say reading into, but like listening to some of your comments in certain post games or whatever media avails that I thought was an interesting kind of topic along that, right? Is the neurological load that it takes, the decision making, and ultimately like sometimes in the fourth quarter decision making fatigue. You've gone from making 20 decisions a game to now I got to make 60 decisions a game or whatever it is. Is that something that you felt like you could work on and you maybe talk to other people about, guys who have carried that load to prepare for that part of the game?
Yeah, I think that now that I sit back and look back, that's that is a very important part, but it's an excuse at the same time. I think that over this summer, just effing do it. You know what I mean? Just like you got to be, Kobe Bryant terms, same animal, different beast. And I feel like at the end of the day, everything is just a mindset. And just go get it done, And I think that, this off season, I really, I'm in a different mental space, and I'm very, very excited to go out and play.
You obviously brought the guys down to Miami. Jordan brought some guys out to California. What was it like to get the group together, and what did it feel like? You get the group back. It's not the same exact group as last year, but you got some familiar faces. You're bringing in some of the new names. What was it like to watch that group coalesce through those off-season sessions?
It was great. I mean, I think, in the summertime, a lot of time as NBA players, we like to go our separate different ways, rightfully so, because we're with each other every single day from now until whenever we're finished. But, you kind of got to keep, the engine light on a little bit. You got to be able to connect in the off season, hang out. That's the biggest thing. It's not really about getting in the gym with each other. It's really about the off court, talking, communicating, hanging out off the court. That's the most important thing, and I think we did that over the summer, which was great, especially with this group, new faces, fresh faces, rookies, younger players, building stronger connections with existing players. I think it's all important.
One of the things that has been mentioned by a couple of the front office guys that I've talked to is Malcolm and Jonas and some of the vets coming in a little bit different in terms of their approach compared to the vets that have been here in the past.
Yeah,
they really
for
got to bring in their guys. What have they brought that you've been impressed with so far?
Professionalism and competitiveness. When I think of Malcolm, that's what I think of. I played against Malcolm for many years, being in this league already, and he's the type of person that is extremely competitive. I think every time I played him, you could just sense that his no-nonsense approach, whether he was in Boston, Indy, Milwaukee, he's always kind of had that. I'm very excited to play with another player that is, competitive like myself, and Jonas as well. Jonas is a load. Are you
just excited to not ever have to worry about running into him in a game this year? That seems terrible.
No, running into he's a screen sitter.
Yeah,
he's definitely a screen sitter. I think that's good, but I'm most excited to not having to box him out and keep him off the boards, and I'm happy to have that because we were the worst defensive rebound team in the league, and I'm just happy we won't be this year. So.
What for you is success this year on the floor?
Success this year is individually or team-wise?
Yes.
Or both?
Yes.
Both?
Yeah.
Individually, I want to average more assists. I think I really built up, especially the back half of the year, my playmaking chops a little bit. And I think that's just the next evolution of me as a player because I can score, I can see the floor, I'm tall, I can get people involved, but I want to do it at a consistent high level because that's going to make me individually look better as a player. And I think as a team to develop every single night, being out there as a group from game 1 to game 82, are we a better looking team? Are we a more cohesive looking team? I think that's the most important thing as we go through like this rebuilding period, of the Washington Wizards. So,
Kyle, appreciate your time, man. Always good to see you.
No problem. Appreciate
Kyle
it.
Kuzma, everybody.
I chat with Kyle Kuzma here on the Hoffman Show tomorrow at this time. Let's see. We can go to Instagram, and we put up a graphic at Hoffman.sports, also at the Team 980. Tomorrow, Corey Kispert at 6:30. Well, what do you know, Anthony?
Another Wizards player.
Another Wizards player. Tomorrow at 4:30, Alex Sarr. And then on Friday, Jordan Poole 4:30, Brian Keefe 5:30, Will Dawkins 6:30, as we get you set for the Wizards season opener here on the Team 980 on Thursday. We will be live at Capital One Arena for that show. And, of course, you can follow us on Instagram, putting up a ton of content at Hoffman.sports and on YouTube at Craig Hoffman at the Team 980. Okay, that is that. When we get back, real things, real people said into real microphones. What a show, what a show. Been a good one. We started with breaking news. Jamin Davis released by the Commanders. We'll presumably have more tomorrow when we learn if he's on practice squad or not, sometime around the time our show begins. If you missed any of our coverage, good phone calls, good analysis. We talked about it at 4 o'clock. We talked about it with Mitch at 5. Just check out the podcast. Search The Hoffman Show in your favorite podcast app. We also had a lot of fun in our tier rankings. We had a lot of teams that we moved down to the very bottom, which is affectionately known as Poopsville, which I will admit, Anthony, I stole from Van Pelt. They used to do some version of tier rankings on the old Van Pelt and Rosillo show. And I think they just straight up called it Poopsville. So I come up with a couple different things. But Poopsville is definitely my favorite. You know, why try to improve on perfection?
No, I like it.
Yeah, you were giggling like a school child. You really did like it.
I was. Poopsville. Poopa.
Boopa.
That was Italian.
What else? Oh, thank you. Thank you for telling everybody. What else is on the show, Anthony?
Today or tomorrow?
Today. We can get to tomorrow in a moment.
We had Logan talking about why there are so many bad teams.
Why there's so many teams in Poopsville?
Yeah, exactly. Precisely.
Yeah, that was really good. Take Command was a lot of fun today. So you can definitely check that out wherever you get your pods. I feel like there's something else I was going to mention. I don't know what it was, though. No idea. Not a clue. Any of my open tabs?
Ted, maybe?
We had Leonsis. Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. We had a lot of stuff today, man.
Yeah.
We had a lot of stuff.
Maybe the Bears fan? Was it
yeah,
that?
we have good social content going right now. TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is, just search my name. You'll find me. Twitter. People really enjoyed me dunking on that Bears fan yesterday who got lost in our comment section. Hey, buddy, not here. You're looking for the loser team in the away locker room. I don't know what the other thing was. So let's just tell you that tomorrow on the show, we got a Wednesday, which means we'll have Dan Quinn talking, which is very important because we'll get the latest on Jaden Daniels, although he talks before practice, I'm pretty sure, so that's quite annoying. But we'll have a practice report. We will also let you hear from Corey Kispert and from Alex Sarr as we head towards Wizards opening night. And maybe we'll react to a little bit of NBA opening night tonight. See how the Celtics and Knicks do. New look, obviously, for New York with the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. Celtics bringing everybody back. Lakers, what do they do tonight against the Timberwolves? So, anything else from the housekeeping perspective, Anthony? Homonyms, homophones?
Oh, we did say we were going to quiz each other.
All right, well, I have the answers in front of me. So what's a homophone?
A homophone is a word that sounds the same but spelled differently.
Yep. So like C and C.
Yep.
You can see the C. Homonym.
A homonym is a word that is spelled the same. But has a different meaning.
Yeah, that is correct. We have to park before we go to the park.
Yeah.
And then homograph.
A homograph is a word that sounds the same.
No. Spelled the same,
Spelled
sounds
the same.
different. Yeah, there's a same, different, same, different, same.
Yeah.
If you will. Keeping them straight.
That's tough, man.
It's really tough. It's really, really tough. All right. And Steven in the comments appreciates it. Gotta love this show. Come for the sports talk, and I get grammar lessons along the way.
Yes.
I don't know if this is the best grammar lesson you ever got, Steven, but it's a grammar lesson. Do we have time for real things?
Yeah, we have time for the
Steph one?
Yep.
Excellent.
Real things.
We're not gonna be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right. Last night, ahead of the NBA season getting started, Steph Curry paid a visit to Scott Van Pelt on SportsCenter, and this is how that interview ended.
Always great to visit with you, Steph, and stay well until the next time, all right?
Absolutely. Go Panthers.
Good luck with that.
At least Steph can laugh at himself about it.
Exactly.
There's a real
Good luck with that.
Steph thought that was real funny. He didn't even go with Steph's typically a keep pounding guy. He knows there's no pounding happening.
Yeah.
They're just getting pounded. Yeah. That's our show. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll do it again tomorrow. See you then on the Team 980.